Welcome to PatsCast. The Patriots had their first test today against real competition with the Washington Commanders, coming to Foxborough for joint practices. And frankly, we have a preseason game in a couple of days, but the joint practices are a lot more important, particularly early on, week one. Who knows if we'll even see Drake Maye out there on Friday, or if he's only out there for a few plays or a series. This is when it gets real. You have Drake Maye, Jaden Daniels on the other side, team that surprisingly made it to the NFC Championship game last year, and a team that really should be, and probably is, in Super Bowl contention this season. And the Patriots, at least offensively, had their best practice of training camp today against real competition, against the Washington Commanders. And it's safe to say, I think this might be a good team. I really think this might be a good team. Coming out of today's practice, high energy day, packed house, filled with fans. Few people could find a spot with just how packed it was trying to get in there at training camp and really watch real competition for the first time. Full pads, 2 hours, and the offense did pretty well. Now, the Washington Commanders, they are not a flashy top 10, even top 15 NFL defense. They were good enough to help get them to the NFC title game last year. A lot of that had to do with the offense, the explosiveness of Daniels and Terry McLaurin, who's still holding out and was not at practice today. But regardless, this is one of the best teams in the NFC, presumably. They made some real moves this offseason. They brought in Laramie Tunsil at left tackle to give some extra protection for Daniels. Von Miller's now out there on defense, even if he is up there in age at this point. And the teams battled hard. In fact, a fight actually broke out. A scuffle broke out. And kind of the story coming out of today's practice is Mike Vrabel got in there. By the way, apparently Mike Vrabel said before practice, don't get into any fights, but a fight happened. I think Washington started it, to be fair. But Vrabel gets right into the mix immediately. Now, he's the coach. He's not fighting. He's trying to break things up. Comes out, bloodied up, cut on his cheek, just continues with practice. And I guess the line that Vrabel said was, you should see the other guy. He said that to Demario Douglas. So, dude is such an alpha. Good to see that in New England, especially after the tepid coaching of Gerard Mayo and Bill Belichick, who you could say was an alpha, but the last 4 to 5 seasons in Foxborough, he was kind of coasting on the back 9 of his career, or the back 3, really. But Drake Maye was really sharp today. He did throw an interception. I'll get to that in a second. It was near the end, so that did leave a bit of a mark on the practice, but very good before that. 14 of 20 passing. 2 of those passes were dropped, so he should have gone 16 of 20. Threw 3 touchdown passes today. A scramble touchdown. Only 1 sack, so the offensive line looked a lot better today. And, of course, he had the interception at the very end in team periods. They dominated the red zone early. Completion percentage, of course, is going to be down a little in the red zone, but he still went 5 of 9. Had touchdown passes to Stefon Diggs, Kayshon Boutte, and Mac Hollins, who had a good practice today, and also drew a defensive pass interference, throwing it to Stefon Diggs. And I mentioned he did scramble when a hole opened for a touchdown. They did some game situations, 25-yard line, 45 seconds left, so high red zone. He hit Hunter Henry for 7 yards, Kayshon Boutte for 7 yards. Did miss Stefon Diggs on a quarter fade, and then the interception happened there toward the end. But in 11-on-11s, he started 9 of 12. Downfield throws to Mac Hollins, to Douglas, Hunter Henry on a play-action seam touchdown pass. Again, there were a couple drops. Those were Mac Hollins and TreVeyon Henderson. They also did a little bit of 7-on-7 work. Maye went 3 of 6, hitting Diggs a couple of times. Also targeted Mac Hollins in there. Believe it or not, though, the best quarterback coming out of today's practice was not Drake Maye. It was not Jaden Daniels on the other side. It was Josh Dobbs. Now, I'm not saying Josh Dobbs is better, but I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable of him as our backup coming out of today's practice. He was very shaky the last couple of weeks, but seems to be getting a little bit better the last few days. He went 17 of 20 today. Now, he's playing against mostly backups, but 17 of 20 with 4 touchdowns in 11-on-11s, 4 of 6 in 7-on-7s. Had arguably the play of the day, 25-yard touchdown pass to Mac Hollins, who made a one-handed grab against corner Bobby Price. Feeling pretty good, right? If your quarterbacks, even Josh Dobbs, is going out there and tearing it up in the first joint practice of the season, it's all working out. And I was really concerned heading into this practice because, and this has been kind of the narrative the last couple of days in the Boston sports media, is Mike Vrabel having too light of a training camp. Remember last year with Gerard Mayo, he just beat the hell out of his players. They were not just wearing pads as much as they possibly could, they were tackling players to the ground, which of course we have not seen from Mike Vrabel. We did not see from Bill Belichick in the final years in New England. And the conditioning was good week 1 against Cincinnati, and it was good against Seattle week 2 with Gerard Mayo as head coach. But once teams got a little bit of tape on them, they got better conditioned. We saw what happened to the Patriots after that. Vrabel has a very different approach to training camp. Vrabel basically takes it easy. It's a slow ramp-up period. And we saw his Tennessee teams struggle the last 3 years because of that. And that was actually a big story his final years in Nashville, was that they are taking these training camp practices very light. And the team struggled out of the gate. I think Bedard said the Titans lost their last 3 season openers under Mike Vrabel, and the team just kind of looked out of shape. So coming into this practice, this is a big litmus test, right? Is the team ready to go? I mean, they've had just as many walkthroughs, seemingly, as they've had padded practices. They had a walkthrough yesterday before today's joint practice. The team looks ready to go. So we know they're taking a cautious approach with players like Carlton Davis, who was out there today in pads but really didn't do anything. Morgan Moses getting limited reps. He didn't practice at all today, it doesn't seem like. Being cautious with Christian Gonzalez with a hamstring injury, that's probably fairly minor. This is Mike Vrabel's approach. But if the team is picking up the offense, which is much more complex than we've seen in recent years with Alex Van Pelt last year or Bill O'Brien the year before, and certainly with Matt Patricia, Belichick's second to last season in New England, that's probably why they're doing so many walkthroughs, is the complexity of this offense. It is a new defense, a defense we haven't seen in New England before, and they're trying to figure it out. But what we are seeing, which we didn't see last year, and frankly, we didn't see the couple years before that with Mac Jones, is a team that is lining up in the correct spot, not too many false start penalties, getting in and out of the huddle quickly, not too many delay of games, if any delay of games. They're all on the same page. Even guys like Kayshon Boutte last year, who consistently lined up in the wrong spot and ran the incorrect route. Even though he had a pretty good season, he's tearing it up throughout training camp, and I haven't heard anything about Kayshon Boutte not being on the same page, not building chemistry with his quarterback. It's like that across the board. So credit to Mike Vrabel, credit to Josh McDaniels. I know it has not been the aggressive training camp. This is the lightest training camp in New England Patriots history, but when they're out there in full pads, these are aggressive practices, and today certainly was, and the Patriots passed the test, at least on the offensive side of the football. Predictable offensive line today, seemingly going to be the starting lineup in week 1, although I'll get to the Bradbury stuff in a second, as I've spoken about many times. But Will Campbell, left tackle, Jared Wilson started at left guard, Garrett Bradbury at center, Mike Onwenu at right guard, and then I said Morgan Moses was limited through walkthroughs. There might be an injury there. We're not really sure. So DeMontre Jacobs started in his spot today at right tackle. Let's start with Will Campbell. Will Campbell, no pressures allowed today in 11-on-11s. Blocking Dietrich-wise, expatriate, we know what he's capable of. He had a huge block on him that led to a big Travion Henderson run. Really a solid practice for Will Campbell. Really nothing that you can say that he did badly today. I think they did a little bit of one-on-ones. I'm not sure. They were saying the Commanders didn't want to do one-on-ones, but he did go 0 for 1 against Wise. But when it came to actual gameplay, Will Campbell did an excellent job out there, and I think he's ready to go week 1. I know there's Felgers of the world are saying, like, does he have any competition? Why are we just giving him the job? But if he's good enough to start out there and play well consistently, which he pretty much has done all of camp. He did have a few shaky plays last week, but Will Campbell's done an excellent job. Went against real competition for the first time. Players that don't know his tendencies, and he held his own out there. Jared Wilson, clean in team periods. The left guard job is his unless they want to give him the center job. He continues to perform very well after coming off of a kind of a rough practice for him. Really his only rough practice on Monday. Michael Wenu did an excellent job blocking. DeMontre Jacobs, kind of in a swing tackle battle right now with a few other players, but he was solid out there. You hope he's not starting week 1. Didn't do a bad job. Really, the only rough patch in that offensive line in the first joint practice was Garrett Bradbury, who, again, I was not thrilled when the Patriots signed him. He really struggled at Minnesota last year at the center spot. I get it, they needed a center. He was, I guess, the best player available, but he allowed a tackle for a loss on a run. He gave up a sack, a poor screen block in the opening series, lost both of his one-on-one reps, and ended up getting shifted to the second team briefly at a certain point in practice today, and Ben Brown started getting the first team center reps. So that center spot is a bit worrisome, and that's why I'm a little concerned about this idea that Jared Wilson needs to start at left guard. I get it, he's a rookie. He's played the position well. Will Campbell's played the position well. You can shore up that left side of the line, but the center position is obviously very important, and what we've heard about Garrett Bradbury is he can run block, but he can't really pass block that well. Well, today he couldn't even run block. So I get it. They're going to give him the starting job, at least early on in training camp. Let him lose it if he doesn't play well enough. But frankly, he has not played well enough, and perhaps that's the reason they ended up putting Ben Brown in there. But look, Jared Wilson was a very dominant center last year at the University of Georgia. Had some fumble exchanges with Drake Maye throughout training camp, as did Garrett Bradbury, but I think it's worth giving him a shot. He's a smart player. Everyone talks about how he's the smartest guy in the room. Put him back at center, and then you got plenty of guys to choose from at left guard. You got Cole Strange, who is not just fighting to make the starting lineup, he's fighting to make the starting roster at this point. Layden Robinson, City So. All right, they're trying out Caden Wallace at the guard positions. There's a lot of players that they're going to be able to pick and choose from. I would much rather pick from the depth at left guard than really the lack of depth at the center position. Get Jared Wilson out there at the center spot, hopefully in Friday's preseason game. See how he does, because I would feel much more comfortable with him at that position than Garrett Bradbury. But I've talked about this many, many times, so that's enough of that, at least until Friday. The receivers, Mac Hollins, finally had a breakout day. We've been waiting to hear from Mac Hollins. Is he going to be in the starting lineup? Kayshon Boutte's been consistent throughout camp. Maybe he earned the starting X receiver role. There's also Kyle Williams. But Josh McDaniels loves Mac Hollins, coached him in Las Vegas. He went 5 of 7 today on targets and 11 on 11s. One of them was a drop, unfortunately, but did have 2 touchdowns, one on a deep cross from Drake Maye, and then the one-arm catch on a fade from Josh Dobbs. Great in the red zone. Physical player, brings some size to the receiver position that the Patriots haven't had in many, many years. Good to see him finally have a good practice, and that's what you want to see. When you're going up against real competition, are your veteran receivers stepping up? Mac Hollins stepped up. But speaking of stepping up, the guy who stepped up all of training camp and is frankly the wide receiver number 1 on this roster, even with Stefon Diggs there, is Demario Douglas. Did have a drop today, but he went 4 of 6 targets in 11 on 11s, 1 of 2 in 7 on 7s. Big gains on shallow crossers, which we know Josh McDaniels loves. Maye threw that interception that was a tip pass at the end of the red zone drills, but he was wide open on that play as well. Been the top target for Drake Maye. Probably is going to continue to be the top target as a slot receiver in Josh McDaniels' offense. He's your best receiver right now, even with Stefon Diggs on the roster. And maybe your second best receiver throughout camp isn't even Diggs. It's Kayshon Boutte, who wasn't targeted a lot today in 11 on 11s, only 2 targets, but Go look up the highlight on X. Had a really great contested back shoulder throw catch in 11-on-11s going up against Marshawn Lattimore. That's what you need to see. Patriots do not have contested catch guys. And if Booty can become that guy, great body control, that's really his greatest strength. Booty can be that guy. If Mac Hollins can be that guy. Hell, if even Javon Baker, who is a contested catch guy, can be that guy, that's going to bring a whole new element to this offense. So, Kayshon Boutte, again, not targeted a lot today, but had a huge touchdown catch going up against Marshawn Lattimore. Fought through the contact, made the play. Excellent job by him. Efton Chisholm had an excellent practice. Really is incapable of dropping the football. Went 5 of 5 targets in 11-on-11s, 1 of 1 in 7-on-7s. He is what Demario Douglas is to Drake Maye. He is the same to Josh Dobbs. I really didn't say that correctly, but you know what? I didn't take the SATs when they did those questions or whatever. But he is Josh Dobbs' security blanket out there and continues to improve when it comes to playing that slot receiver position. You can kind of line him up at different places as well. I think you got to keep him on the roster. I really do, because he will get plucked away. If you put him on the practice squad, he's not going to get a lot of playing time, at least early on. But let's say Demario Douglas goes down. It'd be great to have a guy like Efton Chisholm in there to fill that role with real continuity, as he's done with Josh Dobbs playing with the 2s. I'd love to see him get some shots with the 1s in future training camp practices. He's probably not gonna in the preseason game on Friday, but Efton Chisholm, you got to keep him on the roster, have him contribute on special teams, and then eventually he will be your Julian Edelman, Wes Welker receiver that we've been missing for a while. Now, Demario Douglas already is that guy, frankly. So, 2 undersized receivers. Is there a spot for both of them? I'm not sure, but Efton Chisholm is making a real argument to make this team, and he's going to go somewhere else if he doesn't, and some team is going to snatch him up. Stefon Diggs, very hot at the start of training camp, but really since day 2, day 3, has been pretty quiet. He was quiet again today. 2 of 5 targets in 11-on-11s. Did draw defensive pass interference in the end zone. Went 1 of 3 targets in 7-on-7s. Near interception at one point. He also missed warm-ups in some of the early drills. So early reports was Stefon Diggs was not going to practice today. Well, he came out midway through. So maybe that was just workload management with veterans. Makes sense to manage Diggs' workload considering he's coming off of a pretty serious ACL injury. But you know, I got to give Diggs credit for being out there pretty much 100% of the time throughout training camp, at least until the first half of today's practice. But I'm not worried about Diggs. I just got to see him in a real game situation to see if that explosiveness is there, because it does seem to be lacking a little bit, and maybe that's just him coming back from the injury. But he has been outplayed by Demario Douglas. He has been outplayed by Kayshon Boutte throughout camp. He was outplayed today by Mac Hollins and Efton Chisholm. So, he's maybe not your wide receiver number 1, but pretty good. Maybe he'll get to that point as he continues to progress from his injury. But, hey, if Stefon Diggs is your wide receiver number 2 or number 3, it's looking pretty good at this point in time. Javon Baker, kind of an up-and-down day. 2 of 5 passing in 11-on-11s. Had a touchdown on a slant route. Was involved in a pass breakup in the end zone. He celebrated a touchdown pass in 7-on-7s, which a flag was thrown. How many times does Mike Vrabel need to yell at Javon Baker to get back? Like, celebrate in a real game, right? Because you're going off the field, but you got to get back. You got to get as many plays in as you possibly can, especially with all these walkthroughs. Every other day seems to be a walkthrough in training camp. Got to get as many in as you possibly can, and Javon Baker has a big highlight play and start celebrating. He needs to get back and stop doing that. At a certain point, Mike Vrabel is going to run out of patience. That said, Javon Baker, when it comes to the competition between him and Jalen Polk, he has been significantly better. Jalen Polk, quiet all of training camp, really is not the guy we expected him to be. Javon Baker, as I've said many times, was always going to be a project, a high-ceiling player. If it comes down to those 2 guys, you got to keep Baker on that roster. In fact, you could probably put him on this practice squad, and I don't think a team would pluck him away, unlike Efton Chisholm, who really, Efton Chisholm's getting buzz outside of New England, which is crazy for an undrafted free agent. So I would have Chisholm on the roster over Baker, but hopefully there's a spot for both of those guys, and Baker will continue to develop and, get a little bit more discipline with the celebration. Jalen Polk caught 1 pass on 1 target. Kyle Williams, 1 pass on 2 targets, so a quiet day for both of those guys. Antonio Gibson, 4 catches and 4 targets, also had a touchdown. Hunter Henry, 4 of 4 with a touchdown. Austin Hooper, 1 of 1 with a touchdown. Maybe I'm getting a little too excited, but the receiving core doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem. It's been a problem for 6 years now. Knock on wood, it's not going to be a problem this year. So much competition. Kendrick Bourne might not even be good enough to make the roster, especially now that he has an injury. Going to be out of practice the rest of the week, not going to play on Friday. So, I'm encouraged. I hope you're encouraged too. Let me know in the comments. What are your thoughts on this receiving core? Who should be in that starting lineup and who should be on the outs? Who should be looking in from the outside, not making this roster? Let me know in the comments below. Some other things on defense. Obviously, they're going up against Jaden Daniels. I'm not sure he'll even play on Friday. Not sure if Drake Maye will play, but by the looks of it, Drake Maye outdueled Jaden Daniels today, which is shocking. It really is. Jaden Daniels, the argument for drafting him, and I know the Patriots didn't have the opportunity to draft Jaden Daniels, and I think they probably would have over Drake Maye, but Jaden Daniels played 5 years of college because of all the COVID rules and all of that, won a Heisman Trophy, really came in looking like a veteran quarterback week 1. Drake Maye was just raw talent. Only started a couple years at University of North Carolina. If Drake Maye is already starting to catch Jaden Daniels, and I'm not saying he's a better quarterback, but he outdueled Jaden Daniels today, that is a very good sign. And a lot of that credit has to go to Josh McDaniels, who made even Mac Jones look good. But Jaden Daniels, he did have his moments in today's practice. He shredded the first-team defense to start, hit Zach Ertz twice on a crosser, which was both the fault of Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers. Duggar did not have a great day once again today. Threw a great quick screen pass under pressure from Milton Williams. But eventually the defense started to bounce back. Christian Barmore nearly sacked Daniels at one point, which forced a throwaway. Harold Landry stuffed a zone read and notched a sack on a stunt. Daniels misfired to Ertz because Jalen Hawkins was playing great coverage at the safety spot. Jalen Hawkins, by the way, having a sneaky good camp. With all the injuries we're seeing with the DBs, it's good to see that happening. There was also a botched QB running back exchange involving Jaden Daniels. Daniels went 1 of 3 in the high red zone drills. The one pass completion was to Deebo Samuel, who does not look like himself. Of course, in the flat against Kyle Duggar. Bunch of run stuffs from Kyrus Tonga, Christian Ellis, Keon White, and Hawkins as well. Robert Spillane broke up a slant. Miles Battle, Craig Woodson squeezed out Luke McCaffrey. Kobe Minor had a couple of pass breakups. Situational drills, 25-yard line, 45 seconds left. Both teams did that drill on offense. Daniels went 3 of 6 in those situations. Denied on a 4th and 7 on a pass breakup from Alex Austin. Alex Austin also having a pretty decent camp. So overall, just a decent day for the defense. They started off a little shaky, but for the most part, they shut Jaden Daniels down. They brought some pressure. They made life difficult for him and really set the tone. And the fight also set the tone of just who this Patriots team is, who the coach is, going in there, trying to break up the fight, coming out all bloodied. How did that fight start? You're probably wondering. The first was kind of a minor scuffle that didn't turn into anything, but the second involved Travion Henderson. Threw a defensive lineman to the ground. I'm not sure who that was. Rumor has it was Von Miller, which Travion Henderson is an undersized running back. I know he's a good blocker. That's part of the reason the Patriots drafted him in the second round, but he's throwing defensive linemen, veteran defensive linemen, to the ground as a rookie in a joint practice. So that would have been flagged in a real game. You shouldn't do that, but I love the intensity, right? I love the intensity with this small rookie running back going out there and starting fights with the biggest players on the other team. That's what Travion Henderson did. And then Will Campbell jumped into the scuffle. Vrabel jumped in. I guess it might have been some friendly fire from Will Campbell to Mike Vrabel. That's how he got scratched up. But as I said, Pop Douglas in the press conference after practice I said, "Coach, what's wrong with you?" He said, "Hey, you should have seen the other guy." So that's just the kind of thing that Mike Vrabel brings. Just great seeing him out there working with the players at all positions. You know, he was a defensive guy, but he coached the offensive linemen, and he was the offensive line coach, but he was a consultant with the offensive line in Cleveland last year. So he's really helping, along with Doug Marrone and that veteran coaching staff that they have with the offensive line room. He's really helping out with Will Campbell's development. And, you know, stepping in there, he's going to turn 50 years old this week. He plays like a player out there. Now, he's not going to put on pads and be Mike Vrabel, but he can coach the players through much quicker than you could see with a Bill Belichick, who was obviously a genius, who could coach every position, or even Gerard Mayo, who, you know, didn't play all that long ago. Mike Vrabel out there on the grass, coaching up his players one-on-one, taking hits, getting cut up in big fights breaking out in joint practices. Fights are not a good thing. We don't endorse violence here at PatsCast, but in the context of a scrappy practice, joint practice, which is really more important than these preseason games, it's good to see the aggressiveness that we haven't really seen the last few years. Some other news in terms of injuries, of course, Christian Gonzalez has a lower leg injury, a hamstring injury. He's not going to play in the preseason game. Hopefully he's back next week, but no reason to rush him. I don't think any of us are worried about Christian Gonzalez. Kayla Von Chason was out, Jelani Tavai, City So, Kendrick Bourne will also be out the rest of this week, and Caden Wallace didn't practice as well. Morgan Moses was out there, but very limited, didn't actually participate in team drills or anything like that. Same deal with Carlton Davis, who actually put on pads out there in warm-ups, sprints, and that was it. You know, nothing physical. And then, of course, Stefon Diggs, as I mentioned, missed some of the early team drills. Again, this is just part of the Mike Vrabel training camp experience. A slow ramp up, many walkthroughs, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, but go hard and heavy when you're actually practicing in pads. Special teams, Andy Borregales might be beginning to separate himself from Parker Romo. Went 4 of 4 today on field goals from 33, 40, 44, and 52 yards. Parker Romo had a miss. So that's how tight this competition is. One kicker misses a kick, the other guy's in the lead. And I think they're going to obviously favor Andy Borregales, considering they drafted him in the 6th round. And Parker Romo, nobody expected him to make an NFL roster, has been much better than we expected. But Borregales might be starting to separate himself. But this is going to be a decision that I think is going to come down to the wire. And they may make it when they have to do the 54-man cut down. So Borregales, you hope he's going to be the guy that wins, right? Instead of Parker Romo. But I'm not too comfortable with either kicker at the moment. This could be a real problem. But Borregales got off to a really shaky start. Missed 4 of his first 8 kicks in training camp. He's been perfect ever since. So hopefully it continues that way. I'm just worried about both players, frankly. What's going to happen in November and December out in the elements. These are players that Romo played in a dome in the UFL. Borregales played in South Florida. What's that going to look like? Who knows? But look, the Commanders, this team that was on the field, I don't know if they're a Super Bowl team, especially with Terry McLaurin not out there holding out. Hopefully there's some conversations between Peters with Washington and Elliott Wolf about a potential trade for McLaurin. No, he's going to be turning 30 years old. I would not give up a first-round draft pick, but you have the chance to have a 1-2 punch of Stefon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, and then Demario Douglas, who's been the best receiver in camp, with Kayshon Boutte, Mac Hollins, Kyle Williams, all in the mix. You make that move if you can. You have a crowded receiving room. Washington doesn't have much at the receiver position outside of McLaurin. Deebo Samuel is about 30 pounds overweight, it looks like. He looked like that last year. He's not the same Deebo that was lighting it up on all the fantasy boards the last few years. So they need some depth at that receiver spot. I think a second-round pick, throw in Kendrick Bourne, and then, I don't know, maybe they'll take Jalen Polk. I don't know. But Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, in a second-round pick, that's probably not going to excite many Commanders fans, but it would add some depth to that wide receiver room. Some competent receivers. Well, I'm at least Kendrick Bourne. I'm not sure about Jalen Polk. You might have to give up Baker, right? Or you have to give up a Mac Hollins, who I don't think they're going to want to trade. They're not going to trade Kyle Williams at this point, but I think it's worth exploring. I think it's worth exploring Micah Parsons. I would give up a first-round pick for Micah Parsons. But, look, you got Washington in town. Elliott Wolf, you got to start having those conversations. At least see if you can make this a reality, because you have a plethora of B-plus receivers right now. You might as well trade a couple of them and a second-round pick and bring in an A receiver, a top 10 receiver, frankly, in the NFL. And a guy who's been a late bloomer, right? He played many years in college, really wasn't super impactful early on in Washington, wasn't on these flashy teams until last year with Jayden Daniels, but he has, the last 2 to 3 seasons, been one of the best receivers in the NFL, and also adds a new element to that offense that they've been missing for quite some time. And, he's not a slot receiver. He's not Stefon Diggs. And I know the holdout stuff raises some potential red flags, but from everything I've heard about McLaurin, team leader, high IQ guy, very disciplined in the locker room, and I do not blame him at all for trying to get the bag at this point in his career, because this is going to be his last lucrative contract, and I would hold out too if I were in his position. So get it done, Elliott Wolf, if you can. Some VIPs at today's practice. Robert Kraft, of course, the most important person there. John Bon Jovi was in attendance as well, but most importantly, to the Celtics fans listening, Jason Tatum was on hand and was not walking around in a boot. Walking around, normal sneakers and socks, no limp, nothing. Looks ready to go. Obviously, he's not ready to go. Probably at the earliest would be February, about the last third of the NBA season. You might get him, or it's possible the Celtics don't see him all season long, but Jason Tatum was in town with no boot, looking good, chatting it up with Mike Vrabel, John Bon Jovi, and Drake May. So good to see some of that Boston camaraderie being built up. Danny Amendola also on hand, Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, and it felt like the Tom Brady era, just with fans packed throughout the bleachers, on the hill, on the ramp at Gillette Stadium, filled to the brim. Probably the most packed practice they've had so far in training camp. And this is the one you want to go to, right? The first and only joint practice at home, seeing real competition. And look, this is where you find out where the players stand out. They have to go up against each other every day in practice, understand each other's nuances and tendencies, and next thing you know, you have C-level players shutting down A-level players because of the predictability. Well, when you're going up against a team like Washington who hasn't seen these guys before outside of, Dietrich Wise, it's good to see that the Patriots had a good practice, particularly on the offensive side of the football. I did not expect that today, honestly. I thought today was going to be I thought it was going to be a come to Jesus moment for the offense, and in reality, they were the better offense out there and Drake May was the better quarterback. Is that going to be the case when the actual season comes around? We'll see. But I think this might actually be a pretty good football team, knock on wood. As I mentioned, Kyle Duggar did not have a great day. Basically splitting time at the safety position with Craig Woodson, who's really making a name for himself. Woodson, in the last practice, was out there with the starters, and Duggar was with the twos. They were kind of platooning with the ones today, but Woodson's reps are going up. Kyle Duggar, second highest paid player on the team, hasn't really made any impact plays throughout camp. Was involved in quite a few negative plays today. There is a bit of a cap hit. I don't have it right in front of me, but if the Patriots do decide to cut Duggar, he does have a high-profile name, so maybe you could put him on the trade block and get something for him, and then you don't have to take the cap hit. But, is anyone going to take him? Kyle Duggar's basically had one good season in the NFL, 2022. That was it, and he's kind of struggled ever since. I was never a fan of the contract extension. Craig Woodson has been better throughout camp. He's been more consistent. I think it might be time to move on from Kyle Duggar, even if you have to take the cap hit. It does free up some cap space. And yeah, you got to pay Christian Gonzalez down the road. You got to pay Drake Maye down the road. I know they're baking all of that into it, but you have $60 million plus in cap space right now. You have one of the best wide receivers in the league, potentially on the trade block in Washington. You have probably the second best pass rusher in the league on the trade block in Dallas. Go out and get one of these guys. You could afford to get both right now and then figure out the financials later, right? Plenty of teams do that. The best teams in the league have to do that every year. They're right up on the line of the cap. They have to cut players. They have to make really tough decisions. This is a tough decision to make, right, with Kyle Duggar. It's going to be a tough decision that they're probably going to have to make with Kendrick Bourne. We all love Kendrick Bourne, but they have the chance, even if they don't cut either of those guys, they have the cap space to pay both. And I think the Patriots should do it. And if they want a little bit more flexibility, getting rid of Kendrick Bourne, getting rid of Kyle Duggar, freeing up a little bit more cap space, even if you have to eat a little bit of it, I think it makes a lot of sense right now because I don't see either of those guys really contributing, which is shocking to say about Kyle Duggar, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I've never been a fan. I've never been a real fan. He jumps at things too early. He's easily fooled. He's often in the wrong spot. I know, very athletic player, but he's not a free safety. He's a strong safety, and Patriots have a lot of depth at both of those positions and guys that have really proven themselves. And with all these DBs that are going down or not participating in camp, I just want to see more opportunities for some of these younger players that, frankly, are outplaying Kyle Duggar at this point in time. What else is going on? Tom Brady statue going to be revealed at 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Another Tom Brady ceremony. Hopefully, Kraft doesn't screw this up and it actually looks like Tom Brady. I guess something that does concern me a little bit about Drake Maye, and it's always been a concern, and maybe this is just my bias after watching Tom Brady for 20 plus years and his picture-perfect mechanics. The way Brady throws the football, when he's releasing it, it looks like a perfect vertical line above his head. In reality, it's like this if you're watching on video. When Drake Maye throws the football, it's a lot closer to his ear. And Maye is basically the same height as Tom Brady. And, he has the hitch issues, which we saw early on in training camp last year as well. He seemed to have worked it out a little bit. But that tip pass today, which led to an interception in a crucial end-of-game situation with Demario Douglas wide open, how much of that has to do with his arm angle? He had another one, I think, the other day in the Friday open practice in Gillette Stadium. The mechanics there for Drake Maye are not picture perfect. They really are not. I believe he's a smart quarterback, incredible arm. He's frankly more accurate throwing it downfield than he is in the short to intermediate range. He's picked up Josh McDaniels' offense very well. And maybe I'm just spoiled from watching Tom Brady all those years. I feel the same way about, Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert also has a similar awkward release, and you're 6'5", and you're leaving a good 6 inches that you could throw the ball over the defensive line. I think that is something to watch with Drake Maye. Are there going to be a lot of tip passes this year? If I can recollect, I think there were some in the regular season last year. that led to interceptions. Drake Maye also had a few interceptions where the receiver just bobbled the ball on a great pass. So I think his numbers were better last year than they actually look on paper, but that is something to keep in mind going forward. And I don't know how easy that is to clean up, right? It's very hard to change your throwing motion if that's your full-time job, right? You can't just tell a major league pitcher, all right, you're going to stop throwing sidearm now and you got to throw 3/4. I would imagine it's the same thing for quarterbacks. So hopefully Drake Maye, look, he's been much better this training camp at taking care of the football. Really has only thrown one interception that wasn't a tip pass that happened on at the end of Friday's practice at Gillette. Outside of that, he's been taking care of the football, but these tip passes could be an issue that he might need to fix down the road. He's not going to fix it this year, right? Like, it's too late, but, it takes a long time to change your golf swing, to change your pitching motion, to change your shot in basketball. It's probably the same thing at the quarterback position. I think that's something he's going to need to work on, and we may not see improvements until he's in year 5, 6, or 7 in the NFL, but overall, really good practice for Drake Maye. This is just a minor critique about him. Very sharp outside of the interception. Carved up the red zone. The offense, incorporating a lot of play action, really kept the Commanders on their toes, and that's how they were able to get some of the big splash plays today. So Drake Maye had a good practice. Demario Douglas, an excellent practice. Same with Will Campbell. Jared Wilson, excellent out there. Alex Austin had a great practice. The only two guys I see are Garrett Bradbury and Kyle Duggar had a bad day. I guess Travion Henderson didn't have the best day. It was kind of a down day for him, and he did allegedly start a fight. Well, he threw the player to the ground, and then the other player started the fight. So I'm not gonna say he started a fight, but it was a flag-worthy play. So bit of a down day for Travion Henderson, but if I were the head coach, I would have Travion Henderson in the starting lineup week 1. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to have the bulldozer, Ramondre Stevenson out there, Antonio Gibson, and then Henderson will be third down, and he'll take, some first and second down carries from time to time. Or maybe you have Henderson and Stevenson kind of platoon as the starter running back, and then Antonio Gibson is the third down guy. He can play that role pretty well as well. So I don't know. There's a lot that they can do, but a lot to be excited about coming out of today's practice. I really thought this was going to be one of those, okay, reality is set in. They're going up against one of the best teams in the NFC. Both teams are hungry. Both teams are hitting hard. This is going to be one of those practices where we go, okay, Patriots look better than they did last year, but they have a lot to work toward. And they do have things to improve on, but as of right now, they look like a good football team, a potential playoff team. Now, are they a Super Bowl contender? No, and they probably won't be this season. But if they look this good already, with very few padded practices, many walkthroughs, then the sky's the limit for this team. And as I said before, Mike Vrabel does ramp his team up. We did see this with Bill Belichick, too. I mean, how many times out of the gate, even in Super Bowl seasons, did the Patriots start the season 2-2, and then they go on a tear, and then they finish the season 14-2 or 13-3. Mike Vrabel had a similar approach in Tennessee, but if the team already looks this good, they do have kind of an easier schedule out of the gate. I think the Raiders might be sneaky good week 1, but Patriots have a chance to really make an impact early on in the season and continue to build on that. And the fact that they are competing and even outdueling the Washington Commanders. Drake Maye outdueling Jaden Daniels at times today. The offense passed the test. The defense struggled a little early, but they passed the test as well. Campbell and Wilson, the two rookies on the offensive line, looking tremendous out there. I know there's some concerns with Bradbury, and is Cole Strange even going to be out there? Alex Austin did an excellent job, and then, of course, Mike Vrabel set the tone with his bloody face. So I could not be more encouraged. I did not expect to be this encouraged coming out of the first joint practice against a true Super Bowl contender. A lot of credit to Josh McDaniels, to Mike Vrabel, to Drake Maye, just to the whole roster for we talk about conditioning and how Gerard Mayo really beat the hell out of these players last year, so they were ready to go week 1. They all look conditioned. Even Michael Wenu, his conditioning is good right now. So that's so exciting to see. A lot to look forward to this season. We're going to be here at PatsCast to cover it. We'll be back on Friday after the preseason game to break down everything coming out of that game. You're not going to want to miss it. If you like this video and you're watching on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll see you on Friday.